IMF predicts global coronavirus crisis akin to the Great Depression. The organization issued a dire warning on Tuesday about what is likely in store for the global economy. The global economic upheaval sparked by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic will lead to the world's most severe recession since the Great Depression, surpassing that seen during the global financial crisis a decade ago, according to a bleak report published on Tuesday by the International Monetary Fund. The IMF's April Outlook report suggests the global economy will contract 3% this year, with the U.S. economy receding nearly 6%. The organization expects a partial recovery in 2021 but warns that much worse growth outcomes are possible and may be even likely. As countries implement needed containment measures to control the pandemic, the world has been put in a great lockdown, Geeta Gopinath, the IMF's chief economist, said during a press briefing on Tuesday. The magnitude and speed of collapse in activity that has followed is unlike anything experienced in our lifetimes. This is a crisis like no other. The IMF's report is among the most dire mainstream assessments to date of how significantly the coronavirus outbreak is expected to weigh on global economic activity. And its authors acknowledge that even these predictions may not embody the full scope of the crisis, as they note in the report that the economic fallout depends on factors that interact in ways that are hard to predict, including the pathway of the pandemic, the intensity and efficacy of containment efforts, the extent of supply disruptions, and several other factors. This is the most frightening news the fund has ever released on the status of our global economy, Eric Lecomte, executive director of the Jubilee USA Coalition, said in a statement on Tuesday. When you analyze what the IMF is actually saying, the message is things could get even worse, and they really don't know how bad it can actually get. The organization's projections are among the more pessimistic but are not complete outliers. Oxford Economics on Tuesday issued a report suggesting global growth would fall 2.8% this year, roughly in line with the 3% decline predicted by the IMF. Ben May, Oxford's director of global macro research, called such a decline unprecedented. Arguably, though, the key uncertainty now is not the size of the falls in H1, but the speed and timing of the subsequent recovery, May said, using a term that refers to earnings reporting in the first half of the year. Key to this will be the timing and speed at which existing lockdown restrictions are relaxed. President Donald Trump and fellow White House officials have set their sights on May as a target for a reopening of a domestic economy that has for weeks weathered widespread non-essential business closures and massive spikes in unemployment. During the final 2 weeks of March and the first week of April, more than 16 million workers, more than 10% of all Americans who had a job in February, filed initial unemployment claims. Oxford and the IMF tie the world's economic woes directly to these lockdown measures, though many analysts to date have emphasized their necessity. Even without lockdown orders, economists believe consumer spending would be significantly depressed, not to mention the toll such a scenario would take on health and human life. Flattening the spread of COVID-19 using lockdowns allows health systems to cope with the disease, which then permits a resumption of economic activity, Gopinath wrote in an associated blog post published on Tuesday. In this sense, there is no trade-off between saving lives and saving livelihoods. More than 1.9 million people are confirmed to have been infected around the world, with more than 582,000 of those cases recorded in the U.S., according to data from Johns Hopkins University. More than 120,000 people have died globally, with the U.S. death toll sitting north of 23,000. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.